tweets. We'll be checking them over the course of the weekend. We'll be checking them during the match too as well if you guys do see anything interesting that does occur here, as Jeff will be on the draw. Brian is your #1 seed for this tournament. We did go X-1 throughout the Swiss, so he'll be on the play. And we'll see if Jeff can surprise the world yet again. Didn't think he was going to win his match against Sam Black. We'll see if he can beat Jund here. It's both players who just start off with a couple dual lands to begin the day.
I think it's pretty important for Brian to have, I was going to say, either Arbor Elf or Farseek. Farseek being the better of the two. Yeah. It's pretty important for him to get out in front in terms of mana, as that weakens Syncopate and Is a Charm and Dissipate to a lesser degree.
You see Jeff is going to play a Sulphur Falls here. Brian is on 6 cards, for those of you guys wondering at home. Did have to take a small little mulligan, but seems to be doing well for himself. You see a Huntmaster of the Fells, a Forest in his hand, a Liliana of the Veil as well.
Jeff just going to pass with Syncopate mana available. And Brian fully aware, obviously at this point, what's in Jeff's deck, so very challenging to decide to what extent he wants to play around Syncopate, Searing Spear, Is a Charm, a lot of different cards.
Looks like he's going to lead off with a Liliana of the Veil here. So there is your Planeswalker. Let's see if there's an Is it Charm coming. Not the case.
I would assume we're going to see a +1 here. We've gone this far.
See Jeff saying he has a Searing Spear, Mizian Mortars, a Syncopate, a couple of lands there as well. It looks like he's going to discard here.
I don't think Brian's announced that he's using Liliana yet, but
Jeff's ready. All right, up we go. Discard Steam Vents and Overground Tomb for each player. That's Jeff's going to draw a card here. And that is a Breeding Pool untapped, and he's going to pass the turn back. So we'll see if he has a Wolfir Avenger over there.
Looks like a lot of Syncopates and Searing Spears and a Wolfir Avenger.
You see Brian over there with the Huntmaster of the Fells, a Kessig Wolfrun and a Stomping Ground. So there's your Wolf Run for the turn. Here comes your Werewolf in the form of Huntmaster of the Fells. 2 life and a token? No, sir. Syncopate's going to take care of that.
So let's see if we're going to use Liliana on, looks like the last card in Brian's hand is a land, if I'm not mistaken.
Stomping Ground.
Probably worth a +1 on the Liliana.
Alright, so up we go. Brian empty-handed, Mizian Mortars is the discard. And now it's just Jeff's job to hopefully dodge something really good here, Thraktos off the top of Olivia, what have you, from Brian, and be able to get to work in that Liliana via the Wolfir Avenger and the Searing Spear.
It's going to take a while for Jeff to mount a real offensive. Brian's got a lot of time, but Jeff in a pretty good spot here.
Brian draws a card. It's a secret. It's a secret no longer. Looks like that's an Arbor Elf. Jeff gives that the thumbs up. Liliana going to tick up. It looks like Jeff is going to discard a Syncopate here. Maybe a Searing Spear. Okay, so he's going to discard Searing Spear. End step Snapcaster Mage, Searing Spear that Arbor Elf. And it's time to get to work on Liliana, as Jeff's going to draw a Stomping Ground. Battle that Liliana, move it down to 4 and pass the turn back.
This sets Jeff up for a position where if Brian uses an Edict effect on it to kill Liliana, then the Wolfir can finish it off next turn.
Yeah. Oh, this is a spell, and a good one, in the form of Garruk Primal Hunter, which is going to buy a Syncopate.
I assume that's worth a Syncopate here.
Yeah. So is he going to make him sacrifice?
No,
nope, discard.
Going upstairs.
Stomping Ground is the discard for Jeff, is Jeff's going to draw a card. That's a Huntmaster of the Fells.
Excellent draw for Jeff.
In for 2 we go. Going to knock that down. Here's a Huntmaster. And Jeff left with his hand just that Wolfir Avenger, so...
A big draw from Brian here, like a Thragtusk, potentially a Huntmaster of his own. I mean, he has some big draws here to get the game at pretty close to parity.
You know, one of those big draws is not Bond for the Damned, a card that he does not play anywhere throughout his 75. Typically, you find Jund decks varying between 2 to 4 of those cards in their deck, but none here for Brian. Clearly working out for him over the course of this weekend.
Yep. And a card I would suspect is actually not at its best against Jeff's deck, because Jeff's just able to play at instant speed.
So Brian's going to play the Woodland Cemetery. He's going to push that up. And Huntmaster, you are going to flip into Ravager of the Fells. So 2 and 2 to that Planeswalker. And Jeff going to get in over there with the Wolf token. Liliana's going to bite the dust. 6 damage is going to come through. We'll see what Jeff draws for the turn. A Yeva. So not a bad draw at all. So you see Brian draw a mystery card. Looks like a Mizium Mortars, but he can't, not even close to being able to overload that. So he needs to take care of that Ravager of the Fells, which he does. Unfortunately for Brian, Jeff has a replacement 4/4 in the form of Yeva Nature Herald. And now here come the beatdowns again, in for 8. And Brian with 1 more draw step, and that is it. So Jeff Hoogland is going to be up the first game in this semifinal match over Brian Fisher.
But even as poorly as that game went at certain points there, Brian was, in my opinion, pretty much just a Thragtusk away at a bunch of points of probably actually getting back out in front.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't actually feel that bad about that game if you're Brian, given that you mulliganed and, you know, Jeff had a very good mixture of pressure and permission. You know, typically the way the game would go poorly for you, but he was definitely drawing very live there, even when he was on the back foot.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to come back to the booth here for you guys because it is trivia time. Bright and early this morning, of course, if you guys never played with us before, we're going to ask you a question. We're going to ask you to hashtag your answer on Twitter with SCG Premium. We will select one of the people who do get it correct this morning. Again, it is about accuracy, not speed. And we will announce the winner after this round here. And our question, a pretty easy one for 6 months of premium. Grand Prix Miami, we made our large announcement yesterday. We'll be playing the video over the course of the weekend. You can also find out more information about it at MagicGP.com. But the format for Grand Prix Miami is the question. What is it? And if you know the answer to that question of what the format is for GP Miami, tweet us. Hashtag SCG Premium. I feel like this is softy.
If you don't know the answer off the top of your head, there are numerous resources that you could make access to online that would give you the answer. So if you get this wrong, it's because of laziness and apathy, not because of a lack of knowledge.
I mean, you know, I'm inclined to agree with you.
Yeah, let's just call a spade a spade. That's all that's going on here.
So again, hashtag your answer on Twitter, hashtag SCG Premium. And again, we will give away those 6 months of premium after this round is over. But we're going to move on to the sideboards here for these players. Take a look. Brian, going to be on the play this game. You see 2 copies of Acidic Slime, a Rakdos Return, 3 Pillar of Flame, 1 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Underworld Connection, a Sever the Bloodline, Olivia Valderin, and 4 copies of Slaughter Games. Unsurprisingly, no cards in his sideboard that really do stick out to you as good against Jeff's deck, as it is more of a rogue deck than anything. However, I think you know, a card like Rakdos Return pretty good here. Underworld Connection, so he can either keep up or move ahead on cards, as Jeff doesn't really have much of a way to get that off the table. And then Olivia Valderin is problemsome for Jeff's deck as one of those in play. If it doesn't get to a 5/5, very hard for him to deal with.
To me, I haven't, of course, played too much of the Rogue Flash matchup, but I actually feel like there could be an argument for bringing in Slaughter Games just because Jeff's deck is so threat light. I feel you name either one of his quality creatures, either a Wolfir Avenger or Yeva, it's actually hard for him to cobble together lethal damage.
Okay.
You know, his threat base isn't very diverse. He has 4, 4, 4, 3 of his threat cards, and that's assuming that you count Snapcaster Mage among them. Slaughter Games is, you know, clearly more geared for certain other types of matchups, usually Sphinx's Revelation, Supreme Verdict type matchups, but I think it actually could be okay here. I would at least want to try it if I was playtesting the matchup.
Sure.
And on the Rug Flash side, we have 2 Pillar Flame, 2 Electricity, 2 Counterflux, a Ground Seal, 2 Curse of Echoes, 2 Izzet Static Caster, and 4 copies of Clone. The card that strikes me as the most productive here are the 2 copies of Counterflux, just more permission. Very good against a Jund deck with a bunch of 4 and 5 drops in this deck, and no copies of Cavern of Souls. And 4 Clone, again, I think Clone's just pretty sweet against these 4 and 5 mana creature decks.
Just all good targets to copy. Either copying a Thragtusk, you have Thragtusk parity, and get yourself 5 life to catch up. You can also copy Olivia Valderin to Legend Rule that out of the ballpark. Huntmaster of the Fell is something that Jeff wants to be. Jeff has in his deck anyway. He can't flip back and forth, unfortunately, but you know, it's something that he wants to have. And then, you know, you don't really want to copy an Arbor Elf, but you do have some creatures in your own deck that you're more than happy to copy if the situation calls for it, like a Snapcaster Mage or Wolfer Avenger. So
Yeah.
a lot of utility with Clone.
Yep. The only cards I would say I'm confident are going to be coming in are the 2 copies of Counterflux.
Yeah.
Yeah, the counter spells I think are very strong against Jund when backed up with your own durable threats. I'm really curious to see if Slaughter Games is going to be a thing that we go to here.
Sure. It's hard to, I mean, Jeff's deck is full of 4 and 3-ofs, but it's hard to figure out what you do want to name in this situation. I agree with you that naming a threat is certainly not a bad thing. He does have 4 Yeva, 4 Wolfer Avenger, and 4 Hunt Match of the Foes, so maybe selecting one of those is okay. Alternatively, you know, naming maybe a counter spell to push through some of your larger threats, like a Dissipate, is certainly reasonable too.
Yeah.
Is it worth investing a couple cards into when you're sideboarding? That's a better question, because drawing the second Slaughter Game seems pretty poor. The first one might be just okay.
I don't even know if I would mind drawing the second one, assuming that I had enough removal to sort of play against whatever's on the board.
Okay. As we do see both players laying out their 7 to begin. Again, Brian will be on the play this game. It looks like he's happy with his 7, so no mulligans this go around. As Jeff takes a look. And we're good to go. Blood Crypt to start. You see a breeding pool there for Jeff. He kicks it back. See if Brian does have a Farseek here. And that looks to be the case. So a very, very good start. Jumping out ahead in a big way.
Yep. Like we mentioned in that last game, getting out in front in terms of mana is very important for Brian.
See if he's actually able to take advantage this time. He wasn't able to last game.
It does look like Jeff has a clone in his hand.
Okay.
So it looks like he has gone to that sideboard plan. I think I actually might go get, now that it's showing up in some tournament decks, I actually might go and get a playset of beta clones upon my return. Might be time.
It's probably worth a pretty penny.
Probably not. That probably 20 or 30 bucks, I would guess. I don't know. Worth it at any price. That's my answer.
All right, so we see a Rootbound, Woodland Cemetery. He does have Rootbound Crag in his hand. Looks like he was going to go for that, and he's just going to pass the turn back.
Yeah, Brian's hand looks a little mana heavy, so he's probably loath to run anything into a Syncopate.
Sure. I feel like that just plays into Jeff's game, though, however. I just want to make him have it every single turn. You know, by playing this game of, you know, trying to play around Syncopate and stuff like that, it turns on cards like Dissipate, gives him more draw steps to get more tricky. I just want to jam everything out there and make him have these cards.
Particularly when the odds of... You know that Jeff has multiple 3-mana counter spells between Dissipate and presumably Counterflux in the post-board games. He only has Syncopate at 2, and the odds that he's kept in Syncopate on the draw when he's bringing in 6 cards seems fairly low. And that might be one of the first cards he goes to remove, so...
We're going to see Huntmaster of the Fells, a Wolf token, and 2 life there for Brian. Huntmaster, a card that he could have cast last turn that he opted not to. A little bit surprising to see him with the green light this turn. As we're going to see a Think Twice here from Jeff. He's going to untap, draw another card, Think Twice, and Breeding Pool, where the card, or Hinterland Harbor, excuse me, where the card's drawn off the Think Twice and for the draw step. Alright, so here's a main phase Think Twice. Make sure that Huntmaster of the Fells doesn't flip. Dissipate is the card drawn. So Jeff trying to keep Huntmaster in control. You see him play Hinterland Harbor. He passes the turn back.
And you see him not clone Huntmaster there because of the interaction you pointed out before. He can't flip the Huntmaster if it's a clone, and so he has really no way to protect it from Brian's own Huntmaster flipping. So he would ideally like to choose a different target for his clone.
Yeah. Worst comes to worst, you can copy a Huntmaster of the Fells, but it's not top priority.
He doesn't want to fire it off right now.
No. See Huntmaster and the Wolf token coming across. See if Brian has a big follow-up here. Any creature is certainly a good situation for him here. Olivia, Thragtusk, anything. The Planeswalker's good right now, so the door is definitely open. As you see a Thragtusk, a Underworld Connections, a Dreadbore, an Olivia, and a Rootbound Crag in his hand. Plenty of options. He's going to go with the Underworld Connections. So he wants to get a card drawing engine online. How do you feel about that play?
In lieu of playing Thragtusk?
Yeah, he has Thragtusk and Olivia that he could play that turn.
I think that if you assume that Jeff has brought in Clone, I like that play. Basically.
Okay.
And, you know, I think it's more at this stage of the game when mana is not the logjam or the bottleneck for Brian, and he's got a reasonable position on the board. It's best to just, you know, try to build up a sufficient roll of removal such that you're not worried about getting cloned.
So we do see a Wolfie Revenger on the main phase there from Jeff. Thanks to Master of the Fells doesn't flip. He does have the 2 mana necessary to be able to regenerate it as well. So not a bad turn, but you can definitely see that Jeff is behind this in this game and trying his very hardest to catch up, which is going to be difficult to do now because of that Underworld connection. Slowly but surely, Brian's going to be able to keep pulling ahead on mana, on cards, and eventually on life because of Thragtusk.
I also think there's a strong argument for casting Underworld Connections instead of one of your creatures there if you've brought in Slaughter Games.
Okay.
Because it would be way more powerful to Slaughter Games first before deploying your threats, assuming you're ahead on board.
We're going to see 4 mana here. And there's a Sever the Bloodline, so that's going to take care of that Wolfie Revenger. That's got to go.
Sever, I think, is extremely powerful against Jeff's deck.
Yeah. Having a nice clean answer to Wolfie Revenger, which is not the easiest thing to do, is certainly nice. It having flashback sure as heck doesn't hurt either.
Yeah.
So you guys do see Sever on the screen there, taking care of the Wolfie Revenger that turn, allowing Brian to get in for 4 more points of damage and keep the pressure on. One thing about Jeff's deck is that it has some difficulty coming from behind, and if it is going to come from behind, it probably has to tap out to do it on his own turn, which takes away the flash part of his deck.
Yeah, I mean, you saw a pretty similar story with Delver decks last year. A lot of their tempo plays were a lot more powerful when they're on the front foot and not nearly as good at defending himself when behind on board.
So you see Searing Spear take care of the Hunt Master of the Fells, leaving behind the Wolf token. Brian going to draw a card with Underworld Connections on the back end of Jeff's turn. Going to untap all that mana. Going to take a draw. And let's see what he wants to figure out this turn. So he has a Thragtusk in his hand now as well. Garrick Primal Hunter. You see a lot of options here. Drawing a lot of cards. That's the thing about the Jund deck. A lot of high impact cards that he can draw into with Underworld Connections. He just needs the time to get it online.
Yep. And he knows that his Underworld Connections is safe once it's in play. Again, access to deck list, doesn't have to worry about a 6 slime or anything sort of similar to that. Assuming he's not too far on the back foot, it's a very powerful tool. And starting this game on the play with a Farseek, it was pretty easy for him to get on the front foot.
Yeah. So now we see a Thragtusk here. See if that's going to resolve. He is able to pay Syncopate for 2 right now if necessary.
And Jeff's in this weird spot where he wants to dissipate it, but he also needs to be able to cast the clone at some point. So
yeah.
He sort of just got to live with this Thragtusk. It's the only way for his clone to be efficient here.
So we're going to see Think Twice get flashback here. Stomping Grounds the draw. Jeff is going to untap, draw another card. It is a Think Twice.
So now he's in a spot where he gets to play Clone with Dissipate back up, which is a nice turn.
There's your Rootbound Crag. See him pull Clone forward. He is going to do that. And he can copy himself a Thragtusk.
Not a bad target.
Move up to 13. So a little bit, he can take care of Thragtusk, put that card on parity. Clone, one of the more intricate ways to go about doing that. We saw clones, of course, in the past with Phantasmal Image and Phyrexian Metamorph. This is the more honest version of the card.
Still good.
But still good.
Got it right the first time.
Yeah.
Put it in alpha and still just the right rate. Way to go, Richard Garfield and co. He just got it right the first time. Sometimes the progression in metagames as Magic evolves is very simple. Creatures have gotten better, therefore Clone has gotten better. Mana cost hasn't changed, just the targets are better now.
Yeah. Let's just not make our clones better. I don't want to see Phantasmal Image ever happen again.
No.
That thing was miserable.
He's the enemy of fun. But Clone is super sweet.
Yeah, Clone's awesome.
Don't own my own Thragtusk, so just make yours.
That's right.
Sweet.
Thanks, friend.
Couldn't have done it without you. So I guess now Brian is debating using multiple removal spells to clear out this Thragtusk and attacking, or just continuing to play this attrition game.
I think the attrition game is probably the spot he wants to be in. Heavily favors him because he does, again, have that card draw and play in Underworld Connections. As long as he can start pumping out 2 spells a turn, that's where things start to get really, really tough for Jeff.
Yeah, the concern here is that his bottleneck is on mana right now, and Underworld Connections is not really helping him get through that. So I think we're looking at the 2 Thragtusk trading. The potential for Jeff to have Dissipate or Counterflux here is super obnoxious for Brian, because he's still in a land where he's just able to play only 1 spell a turn.
4 mana. Olivia Voldaren. Is that okay? Is it time to pull the trigger on this Dissipate? It is. It's a good Dissipate target. And he follows up, excuse me, here for Brian. See another Underworld Connections in his hand right now.
He can cast a Dreadbore and leave Underworld Connections up.
Take a draw. Ground Seal the draw? Okay. Okay, so Snapcaster Mage is a little bit worse.
So I'd rather just probably Ground Seal here than Dreadbore. That's a pretty good draw for Brian, because the Dreadbore on the 3/3 is a little anemic. You'd kind of want to wait a turn ideally, but you also don't want to not use your mana when you're bottlenecked on mana with Underworld Connection in play. So Ground Seal subtly there is a really nice draw.
No. So Jeff's going to play a Stomping Ground and lead off his turn. You see Huntmaster of the Fells. Is it Charm in his hand? Here is your Huntmaster. Here's your 2 life. Here's your Wolf token. Going to put Jeff back up to 13. And he's going to pass the turn back.
Looking at a hand, it appears a Wolfear Avenger. Think twice and is a charm.
Yeah. So we see Brian start his turn off with a forest. He's tapping 5 mana. And is he going to start with a Thrak? He's going to start with a Rakdos Return. That's going to be for 3.
And this is devastating for Jeff.
It's finally time to make your move, Jeff. Trying to hide behind your tricky shields. There's a Wolfear Avenger. Rakdos Return is going to resolve. Going to put Jeff down to 10. He's going to discard that Ace of Charm that Think Twice. See, Brian drew a Farseek for his turn. Still has that Dreadbore. See if he's going to fire it off this turn or not.
Yeah, I assume we're going to Dreadbore with the intent of getting in some damage and then landing Olivia the following turn. Getting rid of the Avenger frees up the most attackers this turn, as now the Wolf is a... Oh no, he still has a 3/3 in play, right? So probably just want to get rid of Huntmaster. Yep, that makes sense.
So Dreadbore does take out the Werewolf. And Brian passes his turn back, content with just sitting pretty. His draw is a lot better than Jeff's right now.
Yes.
Jeff is going to get on the aggressive side. Here comes a Beast Token, here comes a Wolfear Avenger. Beast Tokens will trade. And Jeff just passed the turn back, knowing that playing defense is not going to win him this game.
Mm-hmm.
He can't just sit back forever, because that allows Brian to get his Underworld Connections going absolutely crazy. And at some point, he does need to try to win. So I actually like that attack that turn a lot, even though it does look a little bit strange on the surface.
Also keep in mind that Brian has Sever still in the graveyard. I mean, so now we go for Olivia.
The Queen has arrived. Has Jeff peeled a counterspell?
I think he's got to think twice in the graveyard. We're going to go.
That's step 1. See a Wolfear Avenger and a blue-red land in his hand. And he gives that the thumbs up.
But it's really a thumbs down.
Yeah, two thumbs down.
And we're going to try to get Olivia
See,
up to
flashback.
up to a 5-5 as soon as possible. This takes it now out of Mizium Mortars and Searing Spear range, which is also important.
Yep. And this is the full-on nightmare if you're Jeff, as he does draw a Searing Spear right now.
It appears as though Jeff has brought in Izzet Staticaster, which is a bit surprising to me.
Yeah, not a lot of good targets. I think he's thinking maybe I can maybe start shooting for 4 or 5.
This looks like a concession.
Maybe with the Staticaster thought, as you do see Brian Fisher is going to push this to a game 3, is that he can ting and then finish something off with a spear or a mortar. So that's the thought.
And for those of you at home, Matthew Hoey has arrived. So he appears to be okay. I'm not sure what the status of his matches at this point.
Yeah.
But he is alive and well, which is good. The most important thing here. So, game 3. How do you think that Jeff made room for Staticaster? Where do you suspect he cut?
I don't know. That's really the tough part, right? Like maybe he shaved some of his threats, but I can't imagine he would do that. That seems kind of counterintuitive.
Maybe he cut Snapcaster mages because he doesn't want to have to fight over Ground Seal.
He doesn't have a lot of good targets with Izzet Charm.
But he had an Izzet Charm in his hand.
Okay. I mean, he has 3 in his main deck. Maybe he shaved down 2 or 1 or something. So.
Yeah, Izzet Charm is not excellent against Brian.
Yeah.
Certainly there are some targets. It's probably better on the draw than on the play. Although on the play you can tag Farseek, which can be a big deal. I don't know. I can see wanting extra insurance against Planeswalkers and Underwall connections while you're on the draw.
Sure.
But yeah, it's challenging to figure out how Jeff made room. Given how long the game went on and the presence of Ground Seal, there's, I think, a reasonable chance that he just cut his Snapcasters.
Okay. Well, we'll see exactly what's going to happen here, as we do have an update here. Matthew Hoey is going to have the opportunity to play his match, as we are in game 3 here between Fisher and Hoogland. So I think they're going to play their match, and we'll probably just move over to the Hoey camera match after this one is over here. So we'll figure out slowly but surely who's going to be making our finals. Don't forget that we also do have those 6 months of premium to give away after this round is over too. So make sure you do stay tuned with that for us early this morning.
There's been some sweet games. I mean, so far, the first 2 games have definitely demonstrated kind of the power level of each deck.
Yeah.
I mean, they got Jeff in the first game and Brian in the second game basically got to do their things pretty textbook.
Yep.
I'm interested to see it while Jeff's on the play, because so much of his deck is about tempo and sort of mana efficiency in the exchanges, and being on the play could make a huge deal on just how efficient his threat cards are and how good his cards like Syncopate and Izzet Charm are as well.
Sure.
And I'm also curious to see if Brian pulls the trigger on Slaughter games here, because that is a place I would be going to, I think. At least be very strongly considering. Because Jeff actually has a lot of, air in his deck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the cards, his cards, they've, how efficient and how effective they are, it goes back and forth very quickly. Like a card like Syncopate, it gets worse very, very fast to the point where you can just ignore it. And then, there are stages in the game where you just want to make sure that he doesn't have a Yeva, doesn't have a Wolf or Avenger to be problemsome, and your Slaughter games can go from bad to great very quickly depending on the situation that you're in.
Right. To me, if I was sitting in Brian's seat, I would feel like so many of Jeff's cards are only efficient or powerful if he's on the front foot.
Sure.
He has to have something in play to make these cards matter, In the absence of the threat, cards like Izzet Charm and Syncopate, even things like Searing Spear, just kind of get worse as the game goes on. Brian's draws are a lot more impactful and powerful, assuming he's not under a lot of pressure and isn't bottlenecked on mana.
Yeah. So one thing that Jeff is going to have the opportunity to do is be out on the front foot this game, because he will be on the play, so he can try and get his shenanigans online, use the flash to the best of its ability, and make it tricky and difficult for Brian to figure out how he wants to sequence the spells to knock over Jeff's shields. That's what Jeff's deck really thrives on.
Well, this is a pretty impressive run, and you know we talked about this a little bit yesterday about just standard not at all being solved.
Yeah.
And then there's this Rug Flash deck, you know, that's just no one else is really playing, and he's just doing his thing here.
One man, all alone. Rug Flash, believes in his deck. No one can tell him otherwise. Putting his money where his mouth is. That's what he's doing. I mean, top 4 this weekend. KC again, when we were in Kansas City, top 16. Wrote an article about the deck.
Taking a mulligan right now.
Yeah, moving down to 6 cards. Very, I don't want to say anti-Thragtusk, but defending his decision not to play Thragtusk in a green deck anywhere in a 75. It's fun to watch.
Certainly not a position that I support, but I at least respect a man who's sticking to his guns.
Yeah.
I've definitely made my share of non-conventional card choices and having, you know, the best cards, in quotes, not in my 75, so.
Sure. You are one to cast a Yamabushi's Flame on occasion.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't think I'm ever going to forget that.
I mean, I grinded it. That was a grinder winning deck, in fact.
If you're wondering where Yamabushi's Flame is, don't. It's just not a good card.
It was good enough. Where are the chips?
You have any other spice in that deck besides that? Did you have the
Frenzy Goblin,
Okay.
Burrow's Guild Mage, no white mana, 2 mountains in the sideboard to support Fledgling Dragon. I mean, it's by far the worst deck that I've ever played, which is saying a lot.
Was that the grinder at Hollywood?
Yeah.
You grinded in?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
You are something else.
Yeah, that deck was horrendous.
Yeah. Hot garbage is a term.
Truly horrendous.
Yeah, those are the 2 words that I'm thinking of. Hot and or garbage. So we're gonna see Jeff take a look at his hand here. There's a clone, a breeding pool, and he's a
Blue and
charm
red
among
mana.
others. Yeah. He's happy enough. And we're underway. Game number 3 here. There's a stomping ground. Jeff gonna draw a card. It's a clone. Into play untapped comes the Steam Vents.
A very strong signaling of either Is It Charm or Syncopate.
Yeah. No Farseek for Brian, so Jeff's got to be happy about that. It's Jeff's going to draw a card. He draws a Hinterland Harbor. We'll put that into play and pass the turn back.
Sitting on a hand of Mortar, Staticaster, Is It Charm, and 2 clones. I guess he can just start cloning his Staticaster and trying to go for the hard lock.
Staticaster or Counterflux?
Oh, is that Counterflux?
They have very close to the same artwork, so
That would explain last game.
it's very, very easy, to make that mistake. Yeah, there's your Woodland Cemetery passing the turn back.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, a dangerously close artwork. You're going to see a Hinterland Harbor again and pass the turn back. Yeah, that one is a Counterflux.
Much better in the matchup, I would
Yeah.
argue, than Is It Staticaster.
Not so much.
I was like, we need to get this guy's Arbor Elves that badly? I don't know.
All 2 of them.
Yeah.
Pew pew. There's a forest here from Brian. The threats are going to start coming now. He's going to start with an Underworld Connections on that forest. And
Yeah.
Is It Charm says, I don't think so.
With the pace of the game being this slow, Underworld Connections would be a disaster for Jeff, so that's an easy counter.
Is It Charm Spell Pierce mode does take care of that. As here is a Steam Vents tapped for Hoogland. He's just passed the turn back. See what threat Brian wants to lead off with this turn, as he does have a very threat-heavy hand right now. And if you're Brian, you just have to, move these cards through those counter spells. Trade your 1-for-1s. You'll probably come out on top at the end because your cards are just more powerful. As here is a Thragtusk for Brian.
I do like playing Thragtusk here because Brian has Garrick in his hand, which is a huge haymaker here. So Brian is playing this in such a way that he either induces a counter, which is good in terms of getting Garrick into play, or really gives Jeff a strong incentive to tap out for Clone, and that opens the door for Garrick getting into play. And that's exactly what you're seeing here.
So he is going to tap out for Clone. He is going to copy that Thragtusk and move to 23. But as Patrick said, the shields are down now. This is what you want as Brian, as the Jund player, to resolve an even bigger threat. And I think Garrick is the biggest of the bunch in his deck in this matchup. So let's see if he does take the opportunity to pull the trigger on this.
I mean, there is a concern about an overloaded mortars, certainly. But on the balance, I really like getting Garrick into play here.
All right, so there's your Garrick. Moving on up.
So Jeff has sort of these awkward reactive pieces in his hand right now.
Yeah, you see a Yeva, you see the counterflux, you see a spear. This is the danger again with Jeff's deck, is if he can get ahead and stay ahead, that's where his deck is really powerful. But having to catch up now through a Thragtusk, through a Beast Token, and through a Garrick, that's really, really difficult for him to do. Because he's coming at these like different angles of attack. He doesn't ever want to have to tap out, because then he can't really play tricky with his flash deck. And when you have Clone in your deck, you actually want to tap mana on your own turn. So that's where things get difficult for his deck, because now Brian's starting to pull ahead a little bit. Garrick threatening to put Beast Tokens into play, potentially the ultimate. Also the card drawing to let Brian start to cast 2 spells in one turn. That's where Jeff gets into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it's, you know, and Brian here, again, with knowledge of the deck list, is pretty comfortable and just setting up his defenses here. He knows that there's not really too much of a risk of Jeff getting out from this bind without using multiple cards, basically.
So now we're going to see a Searing Spear in response to the Garrick's second ability, taking down and draw a card. So he's only going to get 3 instead of 5. First world problems there for Brian.
Yeah, 3 is still a lot of cards to get at once for nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a very, very tough fight for Jeff to try to fight. This is exactly how Jund wants the game to be played.
Yep. The first turns were kind of slow and plotting. Jeff had to take a mulligan. He didn't have a Wolfer Adventure or a Yeva to kind of capitalize, and then he has to start countering every single one of Jeff's spells, as the removal is just, it's just so mediocre. I mean, the perfect example of it is just Searing Spear and a Thragtusk. It's just a giant mech. It's just not something you ever want to do.
Yeah. And while Clone is certainly, like, cloning a Thragtusk, obviously that is good in quotes. Jeff having to commit a lot of mana on his turn when it seems a lot of his strategy for this matchup is sitting on his counter spells and playing as much as possible on Brian's turn is a huge commitment. Because there's so many powerful cards, Brian gets the window to resolve once Jeff's shields are down.
So Dreadbore's going to take care of the first half of that Clone / Thragtusk. Follow-up looks like it's going to be a Mizium Mortars to take care of that Beast Token. See if that's going to resolve. It does. So now he's cleared the path here. So now Jeff again has to find a way to put something in the path while dealing with a Garrick and some other answers. And here comes the Beast Token. Going to knock Jeff down to 23, or down to 20, excuse me. So now here's a Farseek. Just get a little bit more mana online, make it so that you can, if you're Brian, keep casting 2 spells in one turn. And he does have an Arbor Elf in his hand, so we'll see if he does cast that as his final spell for the turn.
Can't take it with you. The only real incentive to keep it back in your hand is if you want to try to non-flip Pump Master and then flip it back and you want some cheap spells, but that's so marginal compared to just having more mana and another creature in play.
See, Jeff is going to draw a Think Twice for the turn here. So let's see if he can catch up. You see the Mizium Mortars in his hand. He does have 2 of the 3 red necessary. I mean, has 5 lands, needs the 6th one. 6th one needs to be a 3rd red source so he can clear up the creatures, but the Garrick will be left behind.
Yeah, I mean, the window he has to really get back in this game involves, Brian just committing more creatures to play, and end of turn, you have into Mizium Mortars. Gets to take out Garrick, and then we have a game again. But there's a lot of things that blow up that sequence, including Brian simply having an instant speed removal spell.
And that is a Rakdos Return is the draw for Brian this turn. That's very scary if you're Jeff. He's going to play. That is
also
more scary.
Kessig Wolfrun. And even though he has a counterflux to cover this Rakdos Return, every turn that involves Jeff using a counterspell at this point represents another turn where he's not setting up creature plus Mizium Mortars to clear Garrick out of the way.
So here come your beast tokens. And if you're Jeff, you're really terrified now because now he has an outlet for his mana. So if he is even mana flooding, now he just has a pure outlet in Kessig Wolfrun and just say, okay, I'm not drawing any spells, not a big deal. Put all the mana on the boat and make one of my guys huge.
Yep. And he also gets to just basically ignore Jeff's permission for the rest of the game if he feels like it. He doesn't have to play into any counters anymore.
No. You see him counting the mana here, so he's saying Rakdos Return for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a good thing to counterflux, yeah. So Jeff is going to counter that.
Excellent choice.
See Brian with Olivia Valderin, and it looks like a forest is his last 2 cards in his hand, so just going to pass the turn back as Jeff is going to take the opportunity here to cast the Think Twice. Draws into a Wolfear Avenger. Untap. Draws into a Syncopate.
Although Wolfear Avenger subtly is a reasonable draw here because he can't commit Yeva to the board to block one of the beasts because Wolfrun just kills it, and he needs to have Yeva in play or a creature in play to be able to take out Garrick. Avenger allows him to block and regenerate, and then still be on the draw for a red source to Mortars and take out Garrick. So obviously Jeff would much rather have his 3rd red source of mana by now, but the Avenger's actually a helpful draw, even though it doesn't look like it's that helpful.
Yeah. Checking on the other match that did begin a little bit late. Matthew Hoey, car accident and now down a game. It's a tough morning for Matt. Let's check is up a game over Hoey right now in the Jund versus Aristocrats mirror.
9, 10.
Sorry, he can bounce back. You're going to see a beast token come into play here. And now 3 beast tokens are coming across. What a shy little Arbor Elf.
I think Brian's hand is just lands and Huntmaster, so assuming we're not looking at a straight lethal attack because of Wolfrun. How much mana does Brian have here? 9 plus Arbor Elf? 10, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, 11, 8. I think he has Xaxes on board, even if he blocks.
Question is, does Brian go for it?
Well, I mean, if Jeff plays an Avenger or Yeva, and Brian goes pass, I guess there's still the risk of him having a Searing Spear.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity for Brian to mess up still. Yeah. Yes.
It's a small window.
Yeah.
But it's one that Jeff actually hopes that he does walk through. So just going to go with Yeva. We'll see the Olivia Valderin and the Blood Crypt there in Brian's hand that are left over.
So now He's not pumping.
A little surprised.
I think he's just happy to go Olivia shoot.
So he's going to shoot that. Olivia's going to move up here to a 4-4 in the air. It's basically creating a critical mass on the board that, again, Jeff's deck doesn't really have a good way to get out of this, especially with Olivia available. There's a Searing Spear, which isn't going to get the job done either. If he was able to draw another red, Brian would have been able to shoot some things with Olivia to make it out of range. Yeah. But either way, Brian Fisher is moving on to the finals. We're going to have at least one Jed deck in the finals as he does defeat Jeff Hoogland in the Rug Flash deck 2-1. So we'll see what Mr. Fisher is going to be playing against in the finals this weekend.
Very impressive run by Jeff, by the way.
Yeah.
I just want to re-emphasize that his deck is, you know, we talk about brews sometimes that are, you know, 4 or 6 cards different from the stock list. Not only are the cards he's playing, but basically what his deck is up to is there's no other deck in the format that's doing anything close to that.
Yes.
So it says a lot about, you know, working hard and doing your own thing.